LinkedIn. If you have any questions and you're on those platforms, you can just let us know in the comment, and we'll keep an eye out for any questions on that. We will start here in about 7 minutes, but feel free to let us know where you are right now in the chat box. We have about 180 people signed up for this program today, so there might be a lot of questions. So please, if you have any questions for our panelists today, we ask that you put those into the Q&A box early, and then we can take care of that during the Q&A period. Tonight's program includes a special contest, so you will have an opportunity to vote on some gingerbread creations submitted by CPF members and followers from across the state and country. You will be presented with a screen where you can enter in your vote and then click submit, and we will announce the winner at the end of the voting. So we look forward to seeing your votes, and we will start here in about 6 minutes. Okay, it's 5:26. We're about 4 minutes from the start of the program. On your screen, you'll see some promotions from our past and upcoming programs, and you'll also see some information on our annual awesome auction, which we'll go over in a minute here. We do encourage you to bid early because we are closing the auction on Thursday, the 16th, so you only have 2 days to complete your bids. We have a lot of amazing items, so feel free to go over to californiapreservation.org/bid to make your bids on the annual auction, which will end on Thursday at 7 p.m. It's 5:28. We'll start here momentarily. We wanted to welcome everybody to tonight's program. This is a happy hour program, so we will be complete by 7 p.m. Pacific, but we look forward to seeing your questions. We have a great panel of speakers as well as a few exclusive videos tonight, so we look forward to showing you those. Again, if you're interested in bidding on our annual auction, you only have 2 days to do so. So you can go to californiapreservation.org/bid to bid on our items in the annual auction. We look forward to seeing your bids, and feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A box for our panelists tonight.
Hello, John. How are you today? I can't hear you. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. My phone just went off my alarm. I was like, oh, I guess it's time to start. I was in my land over here. John, how are you today?
Great. Happy holidays to you is what I was saying. I just wanted to welcome everybody to tonight's program. We're really excited about this program. This is called Gingerbread Builder, and we submitted we promoted a contest for everybody tonight. So for those of you who submitted your images for our gingerbread building contest, you'll get to vote. Today's audience members will vote on your gingerbread, and the favorite will be chosen as the people's choice, and then we will send you a special prize from CPF. So thank you very much for participating. We have some really amazing entries. I don't think Chris has seen them yet, so it'll be a surprise.
I'm dying. I can't wait to be surprised.
They'll surprise you. There's some amazing stuff there. And we also have some great guests tonight. So we have 3 special guests, and we also have some special exclusive videos, one from London and one with our very own Russell Brown from Fort LA. And we will be screening those between the sessions. For tonight's program, we just wanted to also wish everybody a happy holiday and to participate in our annual awesome auction. Can you tell us about the auction, Chris?
I can, John, but I have something else that's very special today. And I can't let this go by without saying happy birthday to John. It's been such a great year spending time with you on Zoom and with all of our friends in the Zoomiverse. I'm just going to make that word up. But yeah, we have, anyway, happy birthday, John. I hope you're having a wonderful day because you get to spend it with all of us up here in the webinar.
It feels great to be over the hill.
Where are you anyway with snow? You're not in your usual.
This is actually from this morning. I'm in Oregon right now, temporarily, and I also wanted to, before we get going in the program, since this is themed Gingerbread Builder, I think this will be an interesting thing to you, Chris. Nelson Bracken basically said shared an image with me about 5 minutes ago, and I wanted everybody to see this. Isn't that cool? So that's Nelson in 1957 with his parents, I guess his parents, and there's the gingerbread houses that they built. So yeah, a timeless activity. So with that,
Nelson is our biggest fan from Georgia, and I actually met with Nelson, and he used to work with Bruce Goff. So Nelson, you are definitely on our list to be a guest next year on one of our webinars. So John, I have the auction real quick. I want to pull up just to show people what it looks like. Can you see my screen there? And what we do, so I want to thank everyone who has generously provided items for the auction. And what we would focus on this year is experiences and getting to know other people in the preservation community. So you'll see a lot of, here is a behind the scenes tour for 4 that will be run by one of our guests, Chef Angela. Is going to be, she volunteered to provide that. We have books that you can enjoy. And this is a friend of mine, Chris Bartlett. He's an actor who is in The Mandalorian. Really nice guy. And he has a signed action figure. Here's my friend, Joel Guns with Alfred Hitchcock. And of course, everyone knows the godfather of Googie, Allen Hess. And we even have some house tour and wine time here at my place in Florida called Pineycroft. And there's John's cabin. So a lot of fun things up here where you can meet people, talk to people. Charles Phoenix, my friend down here. We have George Smart. We also have tickets. And we have Annalisa Capurro from Sydney. Is happy to talk to anybody about interior design. So we just want to encourage everyone. This is one of our big fundraisers. If you want to go in, John, you want to put that link in the chat real quick?
Yeah, I'll do that. And also, I just wanted to remind people, my favorite item on that list is the La Laguna Playground. You'll have to take a look at that.
Oh, I just went right past that, didn't I? Well, we'll emphasize that again at the end. So there is a special tour of La Laguna Playground.
And it is it includes lunch and a bike tour. But what's fascinating about it is earlier in the series we did a program on historic playgrounds in California, and one of those is La Laguna. So if you'd like to watch that whole program, you can go to our YouTube channel and view the whole feature on playgrounds. But this is an opportunity to take a look at it in person. So we hope you bid on it. And any of these items, they're all things that I would love to give to my mom for Christmas. So there you go.
It's all featuring, historic sites that have been saved and people who are really advocates in the community. So you get your chance to have a personal up close chat with people that you've seen on our webinar. So anyway, thank you all of our generous friends who provided those items. And also, of course, thank you to our sponsors and everyone who's donated for our end of year campaign. We sure have had a lot going on, John. And then this is the 4th in our series of holiday programs. If you missed any, as John mentioned, you can go to our Facebook or our YouTube for those videos. So John, I think we're just about ready to roll into our program. First, we got to tell you what we're doing, and then we're going to do it. So we're going to have we're going to have a video, and this one is going to be featuring an interview I had with Russ of Fort LA. It's Friends of Residential Treasures in Los Angeles, and they are actually running a gingerbread map right now. I donated $50 to get the gingerbread map. It's also a nonprofit. If you are so inclined, you can go to their website. But I had a little interview with Russell. Do we have that tape ready to roll, John? John's still
yes, let me pull it up. I had to unmute myself first, but let me pull it up. Now the challenge with this is me being able to play it without okay, so here we go.
Russell Brown. How are you, Russell?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Hi, Chris.
Happy holidays.
I love your holiday themed background. It looks great.
Oh, thanks. I wanted to mention that. So this is a picture that's taken by Christopher Lowney. It's the Bembridge House in Long Beach that was built in 1906. And I thought it went with our theme of gingerbread.
Super pretty. I want to be there.
And where are you calling in from?
I'm actually in New Orleans, Louisiana right now. Usually I live in Los Angeles, but right now I'm in NOLA.
Well, there's plenty of historic architecture there. When I visited the French Quarter, I could not believe how many historic buildings still exist and are intact with, there's streets and streets lined up with them. So is that part of what you enjoy about New Orleans?
Definitely, 100%. I mean, walking around New Orleans is just sort of a feast for the eyes and the imagination for people who like architecture. So I run an organization called Friends of Residential Treasures Los Angeles. It's sort of also known as Fort LA. And our organization was started to celebrate the history and influence of Los Angeles residential architecture. So that's kind of why I'm here. And we can talk more about our programs and what we're doing.
Great. And I'll share my screen, and you see that on your front page here of your website?
Yeah, that's our homepage. And if you enter your email address, all of our content is free. So that's, a nice kind of benefit of joining.
That's why I really wanted you to come on today, because you have, we'll I guess tell people why we're really here, gingerbread. So we are going to talk about gingerbread houses of California and Los Angeles, but I really wanted everyone to see was that there's such a great resource that's available for free, so you can see these historic structures all through Los Angeles. And actually, as I noticed, some of your stuff is more even the county, right? So it's countywide Los Angeles.
Yeah, we sort of take a broad perspective on LA. Like, it's sort of Southern California.
Yeah, exactly.
Los Angeles.
So what are some of these things? We'll go through some of these like in detail, but why don't you go ahead and talk us through some of your website?
So we run 4 programs. The first one I want to talk about is called the Ford Fellowship. So we give grants to scholars and artists to do projects about the history of Los Angeles residential architecture. So we've done about 9 of these. We did a project about post-war Japanese American architects. We did a virtual recreation of Irving Gill's Lost Dodge House. Right now we're doing a series of short films about homes by Myron Hunt. So the Fort Fellowship is one of our programs. And many of those projects that we do, we could talk about Open House next. So Open House is Fort's way of going inside. So a lot of these significant architectural homes aren't available to visit the interiors. People live there. And so we work with different types of creators to make sort of interior experiences. So that might be a short documentary. It might be a playlist inspired by visiting one of the houses. We worked with Liza Richardson, who's a sort of a world-renowned DJ and music supervisor, and we sent her into a Buff and Hensman house, and she created a playlist about what it was like to be in the house. The most current one is called Blueprint. A fiction writer, we brought him into Castle Green, and he wrote a short story based on his experiences in Castle Green. So that's what our open house program is about. The Discovery Center, for every house that is on our trail maps, which we'll talk about in a second, we create a deep dive of information about that house. So, for example, if you want to learn about the Adamson house, you can click on the Adamson link there, and it will bring you to a whole sort of treasure trove of information about the people who have owned the house, the architects, historic pictures of the house, current pictures of the house, sort of a timeline of important dates from that house. So that's what our Discovery Center is, and this is a I believe this is the Gregory Ains.
Right, the Ain house.
Yeah. So this is a James Homer Garrett and Gregory Ain, I believe, work together in this office. I think that's what that is. So yeah, there they are. There's Gregory Ain and James Homer Garrett.
Just gives people a deep dive, right? They can go into each one of those structures and then be able to see a lot more about the history of the sites.
Definitely. And you can learn, about, it's sort of a whole kind of bibliography about that house, a whole sort of bunch of information about each structure. And
yeah, go ahead, Russell.
I think we have about 120 of these so far on the site, of these Discovery Center entries. They all link to one of our trails. So that's
nice segue. Here we go, trails.
I figured that was coming next. So trails are sort of our signature program. So every month we work with a curator, and we call them trailblazers, to develop a self-guided tour of architectural houses based on different themes. So for example, the most current one, our November trail, is called Civil Rights Houses. So we worked with Ken Bernstein, who runs the Office of Historic Resources for the City of LA, and he identified 5 homes that were owned by important civil rights leaders. In October, in a very sort of different category, we did a Halloween trail about witch houses. And the curator was a woman named Amber Benson, who has written a number of fiction books about witch houses and also played a witch on television on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So she's sort of steeped in witchness. And so she curated the trail and chose 5 stops that represent the architecture of witch houses. So that's our trails program.
That brings us to gingerbread. So tell us about your gingerbread trail that you have active right now.
So the gingerbread houses is sort of less of a trail. I mean, what we do sort of seasonally, like we did one for Halloween, and this is sort of our holiday offering. We put together a list of houses that represent a certain theme, and this is sort of Fort generates these. We don't work with a curator or a trailblazer to put this together. And there's sort of ways to experience the holiday through architecture. So for this December, we did a tour of gingerbread houses, of Queen Anne Victorian houses that I think will kind of get people into the spirit of the holiday.
I had a question for you. Who is your writer? Because the writing on this on the trail guide was pretty funny.
I'm glad you like it. So on each of the houses, we divided the sort of what we offer when you visit the house into 2 sections. The first one is, why is it architectural? So that's sort of a more sort of scholarly explanation for why the house is on this map. And then a friend of mine here in New Orleans, actually, who asked to remain nameless, but I'll call him out in spirit, put together his description of why these houses represented tasty things, cakes or candies, or sweets, or, kind of holiday fun.
It's pretty funny. The one is described as blueberry custard with blueberry preserve paired with a Sonoma white. For the gingerbread house. So there are 10 buildings on this list, and you can get the map you can donate, or it's also just available, right? Russell, you said that there's many options, but a donation is optional, but if you'd like to, you can donate to Fort Los Angeles. It is a nonprofit organization, and you can get the map of the gingerbread houses, including these 10 fanciful residences, but we're going to give away 2 right now to everybody. So let me go forward. I wanted to mention that the Winchester House is probably the biggest existing remaining gingerbread home in California. And then before we got to your tour, Russell, I wanted to talk a little bit about what is gingerbread anyway. When we talk about gingerbread and architecture, it's usually a Queen Anne house or an East Lake house. This would be a Queen Anne. And you can see from this diagram that there are some pretty specific identities, character defining features, like we would say. You have these turned ornaments, and the next diagram I have says that it's an ornament that looks like furniture legs, which is so funny because they kind of do. Usually have this proliferation of roofs. You have the tower, these fun, little glass panes. It's everything you would think of as the classic Victorian is what we would call gingerbread. They can get pretty elaborate though. So a true gingerbread could have all kinds of knobs and turrets and things all over it. Here's dentils and trim and spandrels and brackets and finials and balusters and corbels. And, you can just go on and on and on. There's widow's walks. You can have that gabled top end treatment. The Victorians in this period, most of these houses in California would be built between about 1880 and probably 1910 at the latest. On the East Coast, it'd be a little bit earlier in the period, but out west, this is generally that time. And then if you've watched a lot of our webinars, you've seen that these houses really went through a whole period of disrepair, especially in the 1970s. In Los Angeles, they were tearing down quite a few of these homes. Between about 1965 and 1980, just whole neighborhoods of these houses were demolished because they were seen as outdated. So to have any of them left over is really a pleasure. So I wanted to look at a couple that you have on your tour, Russell.
Yes.
Tell us about the doctor's house.
Well, the doctor's house, let's see. I mean, I'm trying to get a closer look at
I can tell you about it. I wrote it down. So it was actually restored in 1980. So what I wanted to talk to you about was like some of these houses you show on the tour are buildings that have been preserved. This one was actually, I grew up in Glendale, and I remember it was a big deal when this house was saved in 1980 and moved to Brand Park. This is the one that's described as blueberry custard with blueberry preserve. And it was occupied by a number of doctors and had quite a long history. I guess I must have read your tour book pretty well, Russell.
I mean, it's sort of magical if you look at this thing. I mean, sort of the spindliness and the decorative woodwork and all the colors and sort of the curvilinearity of it. I mean, just look at sort of how magical it is, and sort of, I don't know, it's quite wonderful, you know.
Well, I love magic houses, as you know. I think partly though what made these buildings so hard to preserve was the fact that they had all this spindly magic all over them, and different surfaces and fish scales, shingles, which are exactly what they sound like, and these pieces would gradually deteriorate and would be increased maintenance, especially in a residential type of structure. But this one's so tiny, it must have been easy to move. And then the picture up on the top is from the Glendale Historical Society, showing the whole team. I'm assuming after it was moved, and they were celebrating, it was moved 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is incredible.
If you go to the doctor's house, one of the kind of cool things about going there too is that it's right next to the Brand Library. So you know, you can make a whole pit stop of visiting the Brand Library, which is like this if you've never been to the Brand Library, it's a sort of amazing structure.
I know Glendale's funny. So they have a lot of great architecture, but you don't always hear about it.
Yeah, and the doctor's house is kind of like hidden off to the side, but it's there, and it's great to visit.
It's open for tours. I just looked it up online, and I included, of course, what my favorite is when you go to these old Victorian gingerbread houses, sometimes they interpret the past. And so this is a Victorian funeral that's being interpreted by the people at the doctor's house, which I got a little bit of kick out of that. So let me go to the next one.
It's so fun. I hadn't seen that picture before. That's
of course I would find that. So the Hale House, let me just say, is built 1887, designed by Joseph Cather Newsom, a significant architect, and is designed for George Morgan. This building was moved twice. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the Hale House, Russell?
Well, I think it was first moved to Montecito and then to Heritage Square. Is that the?
Yeah, it said it was moved a couple of blocks at first and then moved again. I just couldn't believe this thing looks huge.
I know. I mean, this is sort of like I think the Hale House, like people think of as maybe kind of LA's, I don't know, most iconic version of Queen Anne Victorian architecture. I mean, just the colors and the patterns that are on the house, and the ornamentation and the sort of roof turret. And I mean, you can't really see it in these pictures, but the fish scales shingles that are on the roof, and I don't know, it's quite evocative. And a lot of people, it's always funny to me, a place like Los Angeles, because Heritage Square is such a great place to visit, but a lot of people kind of never make it there. It's right off the 110 freeway, and there's a number of this style of house, Victorian architecture, that you can see just by going to Heritage Square. Yeah. So
do you know a lot about the history of Heritage Square? Can you tell us about that a little bit?
I don't really know that much about how it started. I'm not sure. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I do.
How did it go?
Okay, so because I was living in Los Angeles when a lot of this happened, I'm pretty sure this building, but I know for sure a couple other buildings were transported to Heritage Square as part of when Bunker Hill was being redeveloped, and there were so many of these Victorian houses which were the homes of the industrialists and the city leaders in the late 19th century, all up there, Bunker Hill. Well, we know what's there now, Dorothy Chandler Pavilion and the Frank Gehry designed Disney Hall. So that used to be a residential neighborhood with these Victorians. And so in an effort to save them, they moved quite a few. I remember that one actually was burned in a fire while it was on the wheels to get moved, and it couldn't get saved. It actually was, I think it was arson. But Heritage Square is really a cool place.
That one was the salt box, right? That burned.
Yeah, I think so. There's some pretty decent photos of these buildings being moved, and the pictures of Los Angeles are very compelling at this period of transition when they were bringing in. Nobody thinks of Los Angeles as a Victorian city. I mean, let's start with that, right, Russell?
Yeah,
Nobody thinks of that.
Everywhere, Los Angeles is so famous for its kind of modernism, but we really do have some amazing Victorian architecture.
Well, the city hall was Victorian, everything that we think of as like Neutra, and things like that, very modern, or Art Deco, was replacing a Victorian structure, basically.
Street and those
so
yeah.
Yeah, so Heritage Square is really cool. If anyone is in Los Angeles, you go there, and it's like a big collection of houses. And I think there's a little general store there. All have been saved. And Heritage Square is a really great organization. I know they do a lot of tours of this house. What's it like on the inside? Have you been inside?
I haven't been inside. When I was there, things
Me
were
neither.
For COVID. Well, let's go. You and
I want to go. I wanted to decorate it like this, like I have in my background. I just think it's the most beautiful place. I remember when it was painted for an ad campaign once, and it became very famous, and tons of movies have been filmed at this house, so you might recognize it. So I think that's the last slide I have. Yes. So Russell, tell us how we can follow you, get in touch with you, and find out more about Fort LA.
So there's two real ways. If you go to our website at fortla.org, you can just sign up. I think we saw the sign up screen earlier in the slideshow, and you can access this trail or sign up for this trail right from the homepage. And then our Instagram is fort.losangeles.
Oh, wonderful. Don't go anywhere. I'm just going to stop my share. There we go. Well, this has been so much fun to talk to you about Victorian houses. I just think that's such a fun, and wait, I know one more that I'm going to give away to the audience that you put on your tour. It's the house from Fantasy Island.
Yeah, I know. I was going to talk about that one too, because there's two houses on the tour that have, sort of movie, like really famous movie references. One of them on the Mod Squad. That's actually my favorite house on the tour, the Wright's Mowers house. And then the Baldwin's Belvedere is the Fantasy Island house.
Oh, right. Why is it called the Baldwin's Belvedere? I looked that up and I thought that's a strange name.
Yeah, I don't remember where the Belvedere part came from, but
I have not been there either. So me and you definitely have to get together and do our own tour, our own Fort LA tour. But yeah, everyone remembers that house from Fantasy Island, and that is definitely what I would call also a gingerbread.
Yeah, we'll go inside the Hale house.
Yeah, let's definitely do that. So anyways, have a great holiday, Russell.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, we'll catch up to you later.
Talk to you later. Bye. Bye, John.
Bye. John, I'm cracking up seeing myself. I felt like I was in the metaverse or something there for a second.
I hate hearing my own voice, so I hope you are able to tolerate that.
I love everything. Anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed that. And just a reminder, you can find Fort LA. It's FORT. Fort LA online, and we did post a link to them. And then we've got so many fun comments about all the famous gingerbreads of Los Angeles, including Carroll Avenue, and of course, Heritage Square that we talked about. And there's a bunch in Pasadena, San Gabriel Valley. There's the Banning House, Cornelia sharing that with everybody. Anyway, so we have another special guest coming up. John, do you want to start?
Yes, I could start. So we will be introducing Angela Salvatore, and I'm sure she could introduce herself, but I ran into her gingerbread creation of the Ferry Building maybe a year and a half back, and it's just an amazing structure, and it's entirely created out of gingerbread and other confections. And Angela is a pastry chef teaching currently at the Culinary Institute at Greystone. So Angela, if you could go ahead and turn on your video, and we'll get going here.
Yeah, welcome, Angela.
Hello.
Good to see you.
You too.
All right, well,
Thanks for having me.
take it away and show us what you have.
All right. Yeah, I guess just starting off. So as you guys were mentioning gingerbread, I pulled out one of my books, The Pastry Chef's Companion. This is essentially like a thesaurus of all things pastry. And I looked up gingerbread just for kicks. And so we all know it's a sweet ginger flavored cake, cookie, or bread. The age-old treat was introduced to Europe when the first Crusaders returned from the Holy Wars with Middle Eastern spices that included ginger. I wasn't really aware of that. And gingerbread varieties differ region to region. An English village tradition encourages unmarried women to eat gingerbread husbands at local fairs in order to gain husbands. And by the 17th century, gingerbread making was so important that it was recognized as an exclusive profession, and a guild of master bakers was formed just for gingerbread. So then as European immigrants settled in America, they brought with them their family recipes and customs, and Americans have been making gingerbread ever since. I personally didn't grow up making gingerbread. I definitely grew up baking, but I didn't make gingerbread. And it wasn't until changing careers, so I actually studied broadcast journalism and then switched over to baking and pastry. And so I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint. So just bear with me for a quick moment. So yeah, I ended up enrolling at the Culinary Institute of America at Greystone, and I went to school there in 2005, and so returned as an instructor about 3 years ago. So that was kind of a really cool full circle moment for me. All right, here we go. So just kind of bouncing around, and please feel free to interrupt me if I'm kind of veering off course. I started class at 7 a.m. this morning, so I have to get up at like 5, which is not my sort of my strong suit. Can you see this PowerPoint?
Yeah, just hit slideshow at the top.
Oh yeah, one side there. Okay. All right, so this is just kind of put together really quickly just to kind of show you some of the things. So for those of you familiar with San Francisco, the Academy of Sciences was this big natural history aquarium and planetarium under one roof. And so they had revamped it and reopened it. I think it might have been 2008 or 9. I'm not sure how many years it was closed, and you guys might be more familiar with that. But we had a fine dining restaurant as well as a cafe upstairs. And so this was kind of the first, one of my colleagues had an old timey gingerbread book, and some of the pictures were just so incredible. So we got inspired to have a little showpiece, a little thing in the corner of the bake shop to just show some of our skills. So we did a little bakery scene, and that was really cute. Attention, just paying attention to detail. Everything was crafted from scratch, other than, candy canes, slivered almonds, things like that. But yeah, we, at the time, that in my mind, that was like the only way to do it. Everything from scratch, glued together with royal icing, which, if you're unfamiliar, is just egg whites typically and powdered sugar. And so when you zoom in, we put little donuts and cakes in the window. We poured isomalt, which is just a variety of sugar, into the windows. The next year, I thought, let's expand this. It was really popular. People loved to visit it. So we did the painted ladies. And so what I did is I sketched it all out, and I built the 3 front panels, and I sent each front panel home with a different person. So we each decorated one and came back with very unique kind of styles. If you can kind of tell, try to give the idea of a bay window. So I think one thing to kind of mention is that generally when these things were being made, we're running a full operation, cafe, bakery, grab and go items, fine dining restaurant. So this was sort of like on the side. So honestly, if we had, all day to work on it, the details would be so much better. But at the California Academy of Sciences, they have penguins, and they have an albino alligator, which I can't remember where we put that. And there's an albino boa constrictor. So we tried to represent some of the things that people would see at the museum. And let me know if I'm going too fast or too slow. So yeah, just some fun details. And as you were talking about gingerbread houses, I guess I didn't really, I'm not an architect, so I didn't know that was a term that was used for actual houses. So it's really, when I look at those, I get really inspired. So I can see how that kind of plays. So yeah, as you kind of zoom in, you see all the little details kind of coming to life. At this point, we started using gelatin sheets for the windows because it was a little quicker. You can glue it up, and it's a little more clear. And then we put some candles behind it to kind of make it glow. The following year, 2012, I started working at Water Bar, which is a restaurant on the Embarcadero. So I don't know, again, I'm not from California, so you guys probably know the timeline a little better, but after the earthquake, was that in the 80s, dropped the double-decker overpass, the city, the Port Authority, made the decision to kind of revamp the waterfront. And so the walk along from the ferry building down to all these restaurants, it's just, I think, a little more sightly, and there's more to do now. So right next to the restaurant water bar, I would, park for work, and then I would walk past this firehouse. So it's pretty unique because this fire station is right on the water, and they have a big fireboat. And that's usually, if you ever watch Giants games, you see the boat kind of spraying water. Usually during parades, water parades, they, and festive events, they'll do that. Also, there was a fire I think in Fisherman's Wharf a couple years ago, and that was the boat that would respond. So it's kind of neat. So anyway, just a little small version of that firehouse. And at this point, so this is a really, really busy restaurant. So if anyone's been there, it's insanely busy, or it used to be. I don't know what it's like during the pandemic, but the difficult part was making that decision. This was that turning point of, I can't make everything from scratch. We don't have the time. We're trying to make hundreds of desserts every night. So this is where I just purchased a lot of candy. And so that was the first time I was kind of like comfortable using a fair amount of candy and pre-made stuff. The only other thing that was, not made by hand was that wood board at the bottom, because the weight of all that candy, sugar, gingerbread needed to hold it. So just kind of fun. With this too, you can see that it's visible from all angles. So the back needed to be decorated too. So we invited all the firemen over, and we had a little reception for them. And you can kind of see the scale of it. So it's not huge, probably a few feet wide. And then the following year, Candlestick Park, where the 49ers used to play, that was being demolished. So that was my inspiration for this one. And I was like, oh, you just change out the L, Candlestick, now it's Candy Stick Park. And we bought a ton of candy to just cover it. So a lot of detail. Again, people can see it from all sides. So we're just trying to make sure. Yes, those are marshmallow trees. They're Peeps, Peeps marshmallow versions. So then, just zooming in. So, I made one giant rectangular gingerbread cookie that I painted as the yard lines. And then the little guys, we try to make little sort of interactive people. Those penguins are gummy penguins that are peach flavored. Those are really delicious. And so I would order those every year just so I could snack on them. And then just using nonpareils, or in Australia, they call them hundreds and thousands, all those little sprinkles just to kind of represent people. And I tried, so again, not being an architect, I would look at photos and I would try to kind of represent maybe not proportionally, but the stadium seating best I could within, my confines of, yes, you should find the penguin candy. I think we ordered it online. And then the following year, so on that note, the following year, that was when the Giants won the World Series. So I'm like, well, that's easy choice. I've already done some stadiums. I feel kind of comfortable with that. So we went for it. And you can see all the different seating. If you've ever been in that ballpark, there's kind of a McCovey Cove is where all these people sit out on little canoes and kayaks, and they scoop up the home run balls. They go over the fence or over the wall. So we had, once again, the penguins in the kayaks, little infield view. So all the little, so I think, we had Posey's number on the back, all the guys at the time. I think Lincecum was pitching at the time. And then this was one of my favorite things. We took gummy Coke bottles and we made the Coke bottle slide in the outfield. And the mitt was another piece of gingerbread. They have, I think they were gumballs that looked like different sports balls. So there was a baseball in the mitt. And then just, I don't know if anyone's piped with royal icing, but to get a really fine tip and, again, running a busy restaurant. So we had a lot going on. Everyone, it was kind of, as people had time, they would all join in and try to help. And this was when it was called AT&T Park, which I don't know, I still call it that. There's the Coke bottle up close, the little penguins trying to catch foul balls. Forget if that is McCovey. Somebody can correct me, or is that, I forget the statues that are out front, but we tried to represent them all. Also, if you haven't been to the stadium, next to the Coke bottle slide is a teeny little baseball diamond for little kids to run around. So we tried to represent that over the outfield wall, which is kind of fun. Then we go to the next year, and that year was it was a centennial of the Palace of Fine Arts. And so there's the real version, and then above it is the candy version. So this was kind of interesting. This was a gum paste dome. We just, obviously you can tell we like just sculpted it in a bowl. And then I bought Springerly molds. So those are a traditional cookie. And so I got some of the angel kind of patterns and some of the relief patterns along the walls. Here are the penguins again, sloshing around the pond. And, you know, there's park benches. And so we tried to represent the trees with some lollipops, fun things like that. A little up close again, had a candle inside because at night, there's a lot of turtles in that pond. So we got some gummy turtles. Let's see what else I can show you. Yeah, if you're familiar with this structure, I think it was built for one of the World's Fairs. And we had the little, there's all these sculptures of like, there's kind of people looking over these pillars. And so we used gingerbread people to kind of represent that. And then 2016, I had actually resigned from Water Bar. I always say working in restaurants is like dog years, you know, so for every year you work, it's like you work for 7 years because, 14-hour days. So by 2016, I had just resigned, and they were like, well, who's going to do the gingerbread house? And I said, well, I've always wanted to do the ferry building. I just didn't have the time. So this is when they hired me to come back and do the ferry building version 1.0. So you can see how there's just a lot of, you can't really see to the bottom right. I actually went to the ferry building, walked around it and tried to figure out proportionally, like, the sides versus the height and the length. Looked at a lot of pictures online, sketched out as much as I could, and then made templates with cardboard. And so then I started cutting out the pieces, baking them. That's the time consuming part, and just having space for it. Poured sugar windows again, and then did the piping. So this is a really good tip, is like if you're doing a lot of detail on the walls, rather than trying to fight gravity and pipe vertically, laying them down and doing layers of royal icing. So trying to get some of the details in there. And then this was the finished product. It was 6 feet wide, long. I think it was like 2.5 feet deep. And then height about 3.5 once you have the flags on there. So those flags were gum paste. The only inedible part would be those wooden skewers that were holding the flags up, but everything else was edible. We did end up buying a lot of candy, so there's just some proportion. There's a little fondant, gum paste, Santa, reindeer, the flags, and then we did the backside too. You can see how kind of wonky the roof is, but it's gingerbread. But yeah, we filled in each of the little stores with different types of candy and did a little candy border. This is the next one. Let me come back to that. I just wanted to show up front there's this great farmers market. I don't know if it's 2 days a week year round, but every Saturday there's definitely a big farmers market. So we did the little stands with fronts, some hand sculpted things. So going back, so then after that one, this is the one that Jonathan must have seen, because then a couple years later, Hudson Pacific, I guess they are the new property managers at the ferry building, and they had reached out because there was this big campaign. They were repainting the ferry building to its original color, which was more of a gray. At the time that I made it, it was more of a blue color, bluish green, kind of grayish. So this was close to the original color. So I had remade it. And so now you can see where the roof is straight. I had time to really plan and plot it. And, essentially stuck with the same kind of proportion and theme, but just a little more detail to the front, more people, filled in the farmer's market scene a little more, had a little more movement with the reindeer. I tried to be cryptic with my year, or like the times, and do the years, the military year, military time in year, if that makes sense. So 2019. So again, this just shows the planning. So I did all the facades before I lifted it and glued them together. And so for this one, same thing. I really wanted to make as much from scratch, other than some of the purchased candy. Most of it was done by hand, glued together by hand. I think this was the first time, knowing that it was going to be on display for a while, I gave in and I used a little bit of a hot glue gun. So yeah, so this is just when it was on display. There's proportion again, and there to finish it off. So yeah, it was set back, but I wanted to show, there was one little thing, all those little flags, I just took a skewer and I dipped into food coloring and just kind of pointillismed, just did a little pinpoint type of painting. So yeah, I'll exit out unless somebody wanted to revisit any pictures. But yeah, so like my inspiration really came from things that were happening in San Francisco at any given time or during any given year. Yeah,
that was great, Angela. I was
it's a lot.
What's with the penguins? You must really like little
I don't know,
penguins.
they're really tasty because they taste like peach, which is weird because they're
really?
white and black and you wouldn't expect it. But also we were trying to find, without having people, because we were going to make gingerbread people, just like some other figures, Yeah.
How do you
Well,
do
if
the
anyone-
how do you
go
do
ahead,
the
John.
windows on? I saw the windows in the ferry building. Is that sugar water that's been hard cracked, or I forget the term for it, but
Yeah, hard crack would be the way to go. We bought isomalt, which is another type of sugar that it resists, sugar is hygroscopic. It attracts moisture, so it actually doesn't pull in as much moisture. So I figured, okay, something that's going to hold up. But it was weird, it did crystallize and it kind of looked like frosted glass, so it kind of worked out in a way. But yeah, otherwise using those gelatin sheets is another really good way. I know Christine was talking about Florida humidity and that just wreaking havoc on her structures, and it's so true. So that year, I guess 2019, it was very rainy when the gingerbread house went on display, and so it started sagging a little bit, so I did have to do some repairs. But yeah, it's all sugar. Every aspect of it is sugar, so it's difficult. But royal icing is kind of amazing. Being sugar, it's mostly powdered sugar. The egg whites dry it out and make it really crisp and firm, so it's very helpful.
Yeah, I made an A-frame and it just went like this.
Oh,
oh no,
it's so hard for you. Yeah.
With the humidity. Do you have any other questions, John? I know that you were particularly fascinated with the ferry building model.
How are we good on time? I do have a question or two, but I don't know if we want to.
Yeah, we're good.
Oh, okay. So with all of the structures that you've done, which most of them are historic structure. I mean, I think all of them were historic structures at some point.
Yeah.
Which one was your favorite? I mean, did you like the ferry building the most, or what sort of challenges does a historic structure pose to you as a gingerbread builder versus any newer sort of standard structure?
It's a good question. I mean, I think with the history of a structure comes, I don't know, the weight of representing it and making it so that people can recognize it, and making sure that there's some sort of, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's more of the recognizability, if that's the right term. But yeah, I would say that the ferry building was my favorite, just because I had the time to really give it the detail. Because some of the other ones, and obviously the photography isn't the best, but I just feel like, yeah, it could have been so much tighter and so much more polished. Although, part of the fun of gingerbread is that it is kind of like, I don't want to say sloppy, but it's candy. It's it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think the ferry building was finally the moment to like just take the time to do it almost as I'd want to. Obviously, I think pastry chefs are perfectionists, so there's always something we see that could be better, and we want to keep tweaking and perfecting, but you just have to walk away at some point. That's what I tell the students when they're making cakes. I'm like, there's a point you're going to hit where you need to walk away. Walk away. People aren't getting, like, the people that are there to eat it or view it or enjoy it are not noticing all that the teeny little details. But I think, maybe gingerbread's the same, where people visit it, they take in the whole, and they're, excited by it. But then when they, they don't stare at every little detail necessarily. But
well,
sorry, just
what I've noticed with gingerbread, at least for me, because I have very shaky hands, you almost have to be like a surgeon. You have to have surgeon's hands in order to just precisely place things in various places. It's such a delicate process. It seems it's so. I mean, it's meditative too. I'm sure as a chef, you're probably used to being in the kitchen, just cooking things up and moving through things quickly. But this is more of a process. It's like creating art in a way.
That's a great point, because it is meditative. Like, it's funny how so in this at the CIA at the school, all the culinary students do one class in baking a pastry and vice versa. And the culinary students who are usually kind of louder and, they're moving fast and they're just kind of, pinch of salt here, toss some of that in. It suddenly gets very quiet in the bake shop because they're very focused. You have to be, laser focused like that. I think that's when the tweezers come out with the placement of each dragée and whatnot. But yeah.
That's great.
We had a question for you. Do you taste test while you're working?
Mainly the penguins. No, the candy got a taste test. The gingerbread recipe I make, it was from that original book that my friend had brought in, that we made that little bakery out of. And it's really, like, there's surprisingly no cinnamon in it. There's like no spices in it. It's pretty much meant for structure. And so it's like corn syrup, butter, flour, brown sugar maybe, and you just cook it, and you roll it and bake it, and it gets really dark and it's hard. So I don't taste test that, but the candy I definitely get into.
Remind us, what are you working on one this year, did you say?
I'm not. Okay. After that ferry building, I'm like, I'm good.
I saw a huge one over at the Grand Floridian here at Walt Disney World. They have a huge one. You can walk into the gingerbread, and you can buy the shingles. And
that's cool. That's a smart idea. I did make some little kits to send my niece and nephews last year. So I did, little instructions and how they can build it. And so I made the pieces and I sent them the royal icing, but I didn't do it. Well, someone ordered penguins.
That's Nelson. He says he ordered penguins, and
I hope they're as good as I've talked them up to be.
Sure. Tell us about the tour that you're offering on our auction. So it's a exclusive private tour for up to 4 guests. The Culinary Institute of America instructor. It's the National Register listed Greystone. I'm not familiar with the structure. Maybe John could help out too. But what is that? What is that? So if I wanted to bid on this auction item.
Yeah, the building is. I mean, Jonathan, please stop me, because the building is called Greystone. It was a Christian Brothers winery back in the day, and so it's kind of it's cool because our classrooms have kind of been built on these. There's a room called the barrel room, and the floors used to be pitched, where they would use gravitational kind of wine pressing and flowing techniques. And now it's a big event space. And so, the Culinary Institute of America, which is the main campus is in Hyde Park, they bought that building after, I guess it was the Loma Prieta earthquake, right? In the 80s. And so they, it was kind of in disrepair. And so the school bought it in the 90s and turned it into a culinary school.
So an interesting side note this is, you probably know far more about this building than I do, but one thing I do know is that our executive director, Cindy Heitzman, I believe, inspected the building as a building inspector before she was executive director of CPF, when they were doing the rehab of Greystone. And we've done some tours of it in the past. It's a very special opportunity, and to have Angela help provide this to us as a donation, thank you very much. But I think it'll be a really exclusive sort of special look at this place. I haven't seen the inside of Greystone myself, so maybe I'll bid on it myself.
For sure. Yeah, so now it's open again to the public, which is good, because it was closed for a long time. We're still masking. When we first went back, it was masks and face shields, which was very difficult, but yeah, we're making it through. we were online for a little bit, doing classes online. It's like, how do you do culinary school online? It's difficult. So yeah, but yeah, I love to show a group of up to 4 around, and just kind of explain some of the stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna do some more research, because you can still see the original cornerstone of the building. There's there's some really cool nooks and crannies. It's a very, very cool, and that's part of the reason I went to culinary school there. I checked out some other schools, and when I showed up there, it's in Napa Valley, north end of Napa Valley, St. Helena. Just beautiful. Like, if you have to wake up super early and you have that view, you see the sunrise over some vineyards, it's pretty cool. So yeah, it's a great
Sounds
area.
great. Well, thank you, Angela. I think for all of your help and your support of CPF. I think, John, we're ready to roll into that pigeonhole survey of who wins our gingerbread contest.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so I'm gonna have to share a screen here in a second, so give me some time here. Now,
I'm excited to see these. I hope they don't embarrass me. They're going to be like better than the stuff I
Some of them look pretty good. I put a vote in for one too. And then I did post that link in the chat so everybody could have a chance to vote. And the winner is going to get a gingerbread book that we have available. And John has that in his possession. He's going to send that out. Okay.
Okay. So we're starting with Nelson's photo here. Give me a second. Okay.
John has a lot of screens open.
Yeah, I'm running the streams too here, so I have limited screen space, but I just wanted to share the images with people. So this is, so as we're doing this, maybe Chris can type into the chat box, pigeonhole.at/gingerbread. And each of you can vote on the images. Now, when you click on the image, I don't believe it increases in size, which is why I'm sharing the images for everybody here. And you'll see the first entry, which is our Mission Revival gingerbread. I really like the flourishes for the curved windows there, and it's very obviously Mission Revival. I like that the roofing material is covered in chocolate. Looks pretty tasty to me. And we saw this earlier, but this is a different rendition of it. We have the Palace of Fine Arts, and I like the molded cookies here. That's number 2 on the voting list.
Yeah.
And the rocks, I wonder where you buy. Oh, those must be chocolate covered raisins, I'm guessing. And pirouettes. Entry 3 is a log cabin.
So cute.
Entry 4 is a mid-century modern house with flat roofs. Do you think, what style would you call this, Chris? You're the modernist.
Modern ranch. It looks like a ranch, a googie ranch to me. A little bit of a googie ranch house with some delicious M&Ms and some sprinkles. I'm so excited. So this is your last chance, because we're going to reveal the winner in a minute. It's a People's Choice Award. So you'll see it come up in the gingerbread contest. John, do you want to open that pigeonhole?
I will.
I always have something to say, so I'll just keep it talking.
Keep it talking.
Keep it talking, so we could all see your desktop, by the way, just so you know.
Yep.
Anyway, so Nelson says the Christmas lights on the eve are the cutest M&Ms. So I did try to do one. You would think an A-frame gingerbread would be the easiest of all time, because it's just 2 slabs put together, and it was pretty hilarious. We did have to sacrifice that and have made that our dinner. It just didn't make it. It wasn't even photo worthy, John. It was so bad. Anyway.
Okay, so we people on Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn, if you would like to vote, you can also go to pigeonhole.at/gingerbread. We only have about another 20 seconds. I'm looking at the results right now, but I don't want to reveal the results until everybody has had a chance to vote. We have a number of votes here. Let me see. Go into full screen mode.
Are you going to pull it over?
I will, yeah. 1 second. Okay.
Yeah.
We are going to reveal the big winner.
Oh my gosh,
The Bernard Maybach Palace of Fine Arts gingerbread. I thought that was my favorite too. And I believe number 3 was created by yours truly, just so you know. I was going to disqualify myself, but I figured I'd include it.
Oh, that's yours. How cute.
And so Bernard Maybach was created by, let me pull the of the entrant here, who will be winning a special gingerbread house book from CPF. And the entrant for that was Brad Cornelius. So congratulations, Brad, you just won a book. Great.
Wonderful. Congratulations, Brad. So if you want to send us an email, if we don't have your information already, you can send it to chris@californiapreservation.org, and we'll be sure to send you your book. And thank you to everybody. I loved all of them. Like, I'm going to just eat that little cute mission one up. It was so adorable. So I wanted to thank everybody for entering and playing along with our contest. Angela, what did you think? You got some competition out there?
I would say so. Yeah, that was way better than my Palace of Fine Arts for sure. Yeah, that was beautiful. They were all really good. They all like, because then you start zooming in on the detail and you look at all the little, I can appreciate every little icicle, every little M&M that was placed. Yeah, great job.
Wonderful. Well, Angela, thank you again for joining us, and you're perfectly welcome to watch the rest of this program. I have John, you need to introduce our next little video clip.
Will you be playing it, or would you like me to?
I shall. I will play
it.
Okay.
Okay. So while Chris is pulling this video up, I'll give you a little bit of background on it. We reached out to the London Museum of Architecture, and they do what's called the Gingerbread City every year. And they're going to give us a special, they did this just for us. This is exclusive, the first time that it's out there, tour of Gingerbread City in London. There's a docent there leading a tour. It's going to be a 2.5-minute video. Tell me when you're ready, Chris, and I can keep talking if you'd like.
You had told me to do it a special way, and now I can't figure that out. So I'm just going to just do it in the basic way where I have it up on my screen, and I'll share
that should work too.
And optimize, and just let me know if it looks okay, John. Is it there? And I got to make sure this.
Let me make sure the sound is working.
Hi, welcome to the Museum of Architecture.
This
is our 5th year now running the Gingerbread City exhibition. Every year we have a different theme. This year our theme is bringing nature back into the city, so rewilding the city. We have 5 zones this year. So the first one is the forests, and my favourite one here is the tree toppings by PRP because it has so much detail. For example, we've got a hedgehog, we've got a squirrel, we've even got an owl here that a lot of people miss down this far end. We've got mice, we've got a ladybird, we've got a snail, we've got so much, and we even got a pond. So our next zone is the Pollinator Zone, which encourages plant growth, that in turn encourages species to thrive in our cities. So this one's my favourite in the Pollinator Zone, only because they've used a lot of different materials and it looks very cozy. And our next zone is the Urban Farm Zone. So the idea behind the urban farms is to encourage people to grow their own produce. My favourite one here is the berry doughy greengrocers, simply because clearly they're growing their own crops and a lot of details. And in the next room we have our floodplains and riverbanks. Our favourite one in this section is the Danny Dodger. Follow me. Now, the reason why the Danny Dodger is my favourite is because it's humongous with a lot of detail, and it was so big that it came in 3 separate fragments. It's got so much detail that it's even got some dinosaur fossils along one of the walls, and there's just so much going on. The more you look, the more you see. Yes. Thank you for watching our video. I hope we see you guys soon.
Hey, John, where was that from again? Tell us about that group.
So, in a great video, my favorite part was the dam at the end with the fossils of the dinosaurs inside of it. That was pretty neat. So the London Museum of Architecture, and this is my limited knowledge of my very limited research of the London Museum, but it was started by a woman who worked for Zaha Hadid's office, and she started the museum, and she's been doing Gingerbread City since, I want to say 2011, but I could be wrong on that. And so they do this every year, and each year there's a different theme. And sometimes there's historic buildings, and sometimes and this year I believe they had the, as you can see, the what was it? The water, the pollinators. I think the theme was urban gardening or something. But that's my extent of the knowledge of this. But we wanted to thank them for doing this for us. They walked around and they did this just for CPF. So we will definitely return the favor and share a link to their website. And we encourage you, if you're in London, to go to the exhibit before it closes, I think in the end of December.
Wouldn't that be the funnest thing? Then I might actually see you in person, John. We're going to go like 2 solid years of working together and never once being in the same room. So, John, you have actually special guests that came on that I'm very excited to meet. Would you want to introduce them?
Sure. Yeah. Our next guests are coming from the, please correct me if I'm wrong, the Mischief Bakers. And they recently won a national competition for a San Diego historic structure. It's not a building, it's a carousel. So we look forward to hearing from them, and I will be sharing their screen. So if they could start their video and start introducing themselves, I'll get it all queued up and ready.
I might have to ask them to, there we go, ask to start video. Adam and Ted, Adam Starkey and Ted Scooty, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Are you having the best time watching all this gingerbread?
We are, thanks. We're very, very pleased to be here to join you and talk about gingerbread.
Okay, I'm going to let John take over, and I'm going to disappear for a second.
Okay, so I received a video from you and also some slides, but what I'll do is I'll start with the slides in a second here.
Sounds perfect.
Okay, let me find the share. I really should have 3 screens.
Right.
Okay, so we are ready for you. Let me go into slideshow mode here. And you can just tell me when to advance slides, and I'll move them ahead as you're speaking.
Sure. So I'm Ted Scooty, and I'm Adam Starkey. Thank you so much for inviting us. We are 2 of the 5 members of the Merry Mischief Bakers team. And the photo you're seeing here is actually the first house we did for the National Gingerbread House competition at the Omni Grove Park Inn in Asheville, North Carolina. That was back in 2019, and only Adam and I were on the team at the time. And obviously we had a mid-century modern theme for this particular house. And obviously it's based on loosely on structures in Palm Springs. So earlier when you were asking like what the specific style of the mid-century house was, I don't know the answer to that. But the thing that was the challenge here that the judges really liked in particular is the breeze block. So that is gingerbread breeze block. We 3D printed 1/12 scale breeze block, then made edible molds out of that. And then I baked the gingerbread in the molds in order to create those walls. If you want to advance to the next slide, that's the swimming pool. So earlier when you were talking about isomalt, that pool is made from isomalt, so that's edible sugar. And the side or the sand, that's all just brown sugar. Brown sugar, yeah. Excuse me. But one of the things that we used that is a great technique is the tile on the bottom of the pool. We actually printed that using an edible printer onto wafer paper that's then sealed to give you kind of a 3D look into the isomalt rather than having to dye the isomalt itself, which can tend to be a little bit more complicated if you try and over mix it. It gave us a lot of texture variation in the color and really kind of made the swimming pool fun. And at the top of the photo there, you're actually seeing the back of the fireplace. So on that fireplace, each individual brick was made and individually placed out of a product called ginger clay, where we bake gingerbread, grind it up, and then combine it with a couple edible binders and some water in order to form those stones, I guess they would be on the fireplace. And then if you want to go to the next slide, We decided to have a little fun with topiary. So the ho 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 topiary are made from stacks of cookies that were put together with royal icing that's been talked about earlier here on the call. We then sanded it all down, and then we attached, they're called nonpareils. They're like little tiny sugar beads, and that became the topiaries in the garden. And then the next slide should show the interior. Yep, so that's the interior. The floor in this one is isomalt. It's actually over a mosaic floor of, it's like a terrazzo floor is what we were going for. There's royal icing underneath that. That is our attempt at a Noguchi coffee table. It went, because it was just the two of us, we were running a little bit short on time. So the interior is not as detailed as we would have liked, but we had fun creating this and we enjoyed the mid-century theme.
And very much enjoyed taking some of the stylistic elements that go with the architecture, right? I mean, everybody remembers of that era, the silver tinfoil Christmas tree with the various lights. Most of us burned our hands on the big light thing disc that spun and you projected light from the floor onto your tree. So, you know, we liked adding a lot of those little details in. From a judging perspective, they really enjoyed this piece, but they very much wanted to see more of a lived-in look. And so while we were giving them kind of architectural digest, they wanted to see Santa's boots by the fire and see Santa relaxing in the chair, which would have been fun and was something we took to heart as we moved into our next year's competition.
And actually, before we go there real quick, on that tree, the tree is kind of a fun story. So in order for it to be edible, it's made from sheets of gelatin that we molded and painted to get it silver. And then to cut it, we die cut it with dies that are actually meant to cut paper to make paper Christmas trees. And the crazy part about that was, in order to get them to cut cleanly, we had to run each bough of the tree through the machine 16 times. And we were really running short on time. So a lot of that cutting actually happened in a hotel room in Asheville through the night as we were finishing this entry. So our first entry was a little rough in terms of getting it done, but we made it to the table and we did make it to the top 10. If we're ready to advance, we'll move into 2020. So in the year of COVID, the competition went virtual. And we knew in order to do the kind of piece that we wanted to, we would have to add more people to the team. And we had basically a dream team of our friends and sugar artists that we wanted to join, and they all agreed. So we ended up with a team of 5, both last year and this year. The other members include Sachiko Windville of Santa Monica, California. She is our sugar sculptor, so she makes all the beautiful figures. We have Yvonne Darby of San Diego. She does all of our piping and royal icing work. And then Tim Stewart, who is here in Phoenix, he does art direction and also a lot of the heavy production. So this particular piece, which is not very tall, it stands about 12 inches high and it's about 15 inches square, has over 5,000 individual pieces in it, including in this photo, you can't see them all that well, but there are about 3,000 individual bricks in different shades of red. And those bricks are made from ginger clay again, all individually molded and all 1/12 scale. And then they were attached to the gingerbread walls. And over on the side, you can see that is a gelatin window, the plate glass that can be, you can actually see through it, so it is clear. Also, we have a postman there because it was a real rough year for the post office last year, and we were trying to give them a little bit of a shout out with our piece. If we go to the next slide, we'll see the interior. So the story behind this was that this is Santa's shop where he sells decor, and it's the real Santa who's selling everything to fund his toy making operation. So we have Mrs. Claus in there, we have some shoppers. We were going for lots and lots of detail, and everything here is very tiny. So it is all 1/12 scale. So there's over 1,000 ornaments on the green Christmas tree, and none of them are bigger than the head of a pencil eraser. So this one was a lot of very fine, very delicate work. And I think it's crazy to think back, but I believe we worked on this for maybe 6 weeks at the most. It was a real rush because due to COVID, the rules were announced a month late and everything was due a month early for the virtual phase of the competition. Then we were one of the 5 finalists who had to go to Asheville and deliver the house in person for judging. And then there was a virtual awards ceremony last year that happened on the Today Show where it was revealed that we were the winners.
Yep, and we really enjoyed the playfulness of what the shop gave us as an opportunity. It is not lost on us the irony of making a gingerbread house in a gingerbread house there on the table, and we do have a little village. And we heard it earlier, you know, as a pastry chef, one of your biggest tools is a tweezer. I have 9 different types of tweezers for different types of work. And a lot of this was put together painstakingly, one little piece at a time that I can't hold on to because my hands are big. So kind of funny that Lucy mentioned that the cat's name is Quincy.
Yes. So okay. So our sculptor Sachiko has a beloved cat, Quincy, and in real life, and he's quite a character. So we thought it'd be really funny if Quincy was pulling over the top of the Christmas tree and creating havoc in the piece, which is the fun sense of humor. The irony was the night before our virtual entry was due, unfortunately, Quincy took a dive as we were getting ready to put things together onto our stone floor in the dining room and lost all of his appendages. So in the photos that went to the judges, Quincy was in really rough shape, but we kind of just skimmed over him. And then he actually had to be shipped back to Santa Monica for repairs. And the original Quincy did in fact end up on the piece and went on to be part of our winning entry. The next photo will show a detail of the sculpting.
And one of the questions was, so this is 1/12 scale. We like to work in that because frankly, the math works out easily. So the building portion of this entry is 1 foot cube. And then the sidewalk that goes around it, superstructure, adds another 3 inches on 2 sides and a couple of inches to the height. So it's really not very big. And in fact, if you ever saw the photos at the Omni where they displayed it in their full-time display, it's kind of small given that it's in 1/12 scale. And as you'll see here in a minute, we went into a slightly larger
No, same scale.
well,
just
same
bigger.
scale, but a larger piece in this year's version.
So in this example, if Santa were to stand, he would be about 6.5 inches tall, and the children are about 2.5 inches tall, to give you an idea of the scale. So what's amazing about this is Sachiko is very, very detailed in her sculpting. And when we saw the little boy crying on Santa's lap, we were all just delighted with how this would look. So that was 2020. We were very fortunate to win the grand prize, and we were delighted. And so then it came time to move on, and we'll go to the next slide, to 2021. And the next slide. So this is our team. So going, starting on what would be in the white sweater. Yes, that's Yvonne. Then myself, Ted. Then Tim. Then Adam. Then Sachiko. And that is our winning carousel. And if you move to the next slide, we get a little bit pulled in view of the carousel. So our challenge for this year was we wanted to do something a little bit more grand. And for a lot of the competitors, that's really not a problem because they live near the Omni. So many folks who compete in this competition live, I would say, up to maybe 8 or 9 hours drive away. But we're in Phoenix and the rest of our team is in California. So we would be like a 3 days drive to the hotel. So our challenge is we actually have to design these structures so they come apart and they can be flown with us. So in this case, the upper portion, kind of that top tent part, flew in one airplane seat. The middle portion with the column and the round part below flew in a second seat. And then the base was checked. And then every sculpture of the animals, there's 15, each was in its own bag and carry-on. And then all of the elves were separate as well. So in all told, we had 22 pieces of luggage and 2 rental vehicles to drive from Atlanta to Asheville to deliver this project to the hotel.
Yeah. And from a scale perspective, this one is still 1/12 scale, but the size of the piece is actually just under the maximum allowed for the competition. So it's like 23 5/8 of an inch cube. Yeah. Ironically, while we were in Asheville doing final assembly, we actually had to go build a small little device out of yardsticks to make sure that we stayed under the 24-inch rules. And like I say, we made it by a hair's breadth. But unique to this piece was because it came in pieces, it couldn't be assembled locally. And so we really didn't know how it was going to turn out until we got to Asheville. We spent a day and a half working together, putting the final touches on. A lot of that is trim and some finishing work once you get everything put together. Certainly there's some drying time, as the chef mentioned, right? Royal icing is great, but sometimes it takes a while to firm up. And everything is held on there. So as we put it together, I think, we ended up playing with it, especially with our sculptor, Sachiko. She would be positioning the elf and go, oh, well, this elf looks very cute because it's looking at the lynx. But maybe if I also put another elf next to it that was looking at the lion, that would be even cuter. And so she did add a number of pieces to the end, including the elf that's front and center on the main steps there. And he's actually holding, you can't see it in this, but the 5 gingerbread men and women that represent the 5 of us that worked on the project. So it was a lot of super cute detail that kind of came together almost at the last minute, given how much work we did to get the piece to Asheville.
And if you want to move to the next slide, it's probably worth mentioning a couple things about the rules for this competition. So everything has to be edible. At least 75% of the entry has to be gingerbread, and then you can use other edible products like gum paste, pastillage, etc. No pre-made candy is allowed, so you have to make everything that goes onto the piece. It can be no more than 24 inches tall by 24 inches wide, and it can't weigh more than 50 pounds. And we kind of pushed both of those limits. So we were just under 24 inches, and we didn't dare weigh this, but we're pretty sure we were at 45 pounds plus by the time that we were done.
And actually, you know, Chef, you mentioned it as well. There are many different types of gingerbread. There are actually 3 different on this particular model. And we too use construction gingerbread. It's that very strong, very heavy. It bakes into almost a tile-like consistency. And the base, the round portion of the carousel at the bottom there, is actually a 4 to 5 inch tall disc. Looks like a Flintstone car wheel, where we laminate and put cookies together with royal icing. And then once it's all dealt with, we actually use a belt sander to get it back to the right shape. And it weighs a ton, but it gives this piece all of its stability, and frankly made it really easy to carry. So, you know, it's funny how many architectural, you know, kind of things we use in the building. I mean, we need counterweights, we need balance. It's not just a matter of, you know, gee, can we put the finishing touches of, say, a gingerbread molding or something on? You know, we still have to be able to make it move, and it still needs to stand on its own.
And I just saw a question, what ingredients are in construction gingerbread that make it different? So in this particular piece, as Adam was saying, the construction gingerbread is hidden. You actually aren't seeing it. So it's more inside. And the main ingredients for that are, it has bread flour, which has more gluten, which makes it stronger. It doesn't have any molasses or brown sugar, because those both love to collect sugar from the atmosphere and then make the gingerbread soft. So instead, there's corn syrup in there. There's also milk. There's margarine, no butter, some salt, a little bit of baking soda, and then spices and bread flour. And you actually cook the wet ingredients and heat them, and then kind of mix everything together while it's warm, and then let it rest.
And the funniest piece about this, and Chef alluded to it earlier, is frankly, construction gingerbread is not tasty. It is not a good cookie. I wouldn't recommend eating it. And in fact, I think even some of the royal that we use, construction wise, ends up being very much like gypsum board by the time it gets dry. However, the really super finish, that dark, deep brown gingerbread that we use in this, is actually a very delicious cookie that we can use to make kind of fascia boards. So actually behind all of the pink and the green and the dark brown and light brown gingerbread that you're seeing are both pastillage and construction gingerbread structures that these are then, you know, facaded onto, kind of like you would face an outside of a building.
Right, and this is also based on 2 historic carousels within San Diego. So we had one of our planning sessions in May with Yvonne in San Diego. And then we went to, I believe one is in Balboa Park and the other was at
Seaside Mission.
Is it Seaside Village?
Seaside Village at Mission Park, yeah.
Yes, so we went and visited both of the carousels, took photos, rode the one at Seaside Village, and those were really informative for us. Then I had the task of going back and figuring out the structure. So I actually built 3D models in foam core, and there were over 5 of them I had to build over the course of 4 months to figure this out. And I wish I had paid more attention in math, because there's a lot of octagons and angles involved here, but eventually it did work out. And in the next slide, I'll mention the sculptures. We wanted to make this, there's a story behind this. So the story is that this is actually Santa's carousel, and this is Christmas Day, so the elves can now have a day to play because all the toys they built during the last year have been delivered all over the world. And this particular carousel celebrates the 7 continents of the world. So the carousel animals all represent the different continents. So for this example, you have a lion, which is representing Africa. So we wanted to do something a little bit different here. And then all told, there's, I believe, 64 sculptures on this piece. So there's 15 animals. There are 5 gingerbread men, and I believe the rest are elves.
And 2 cats.
Everything is sculpted by hand. None of the figures are molded. So all of the animals, all of the elves, everything, all those expressions, that's all done by hand.
However,
there is some molding of like the frames that you see on the back of the carousel. And molding is allowed as long as you kind of offset that with your entry with the hand sculpting. And you were saying.
No, I was actually going to comment that, yes, there are some molded pieces on here. For continuity, because we had a number of pieces that repeated, like the mirrors. So there's a long rectangular mirror and some very small oval shaped mirrors that are very ornate, gilded style. In order to get those all the same everywhere they appeared, we did mold those because it just makes it consistent across the piece.
I should also mention for the animal sculptures, they're all made in white and then painted.
Yeah, so the mirrors are actually gelatin pieces over silver leafed gum paste, and that's what gives you that kind of reflective look in the mirror themselves.
Yep, and those are molded, correct, yes. And if we go to the next slide, we have a couple more of, now you can kind of see the continents. So we have Asia with the panda and then with the orangutan, and then we have Australia with the kangaroo and also with the koala. So it was really fun to decide on the different animals that we were going to make. And then one of the challenges in this piece was for those animals that are up above on the rods, they had to not weigh very much. So normally our sculptor would make those all out of solid sugar paste, but they end up being quite heavy. So she had to come up with a way, and she's keeping that a secret because she's probably going to teach it at some point, but she had to come up with a way to make the figures have integrity, but still remain very light. And fortunately, she was able to figure that out. So, and I think these pictures kind of show, as Adam was saying, the delicacy of this piece and how difficult it was to get it all to Asheville, then put it all together. And really, it took all 5 of us working together because all of the animals that are on those upper rods, all 7 of those had to be in place before we glued the roof on. And technically we should have had one shot, but as we were doing it, things weren't going right. So we actually had to back the roof off and do it all over again. So that was probably the most tense moment of this whole process, but fortunately it did work out and everything was very stable once the royal icing dried.
And those rods, excuse me, are actually pasta straws. They're hollow. And so they were one of the most delicate pieces of what we worked on. They have been sealed in confectioner's glaze, which is the same material that M&M candies use so that the candy doesn't melt in your hand. And so painted gold, we were able to kind of reinforce those pieces of pasta so that they would hold the weight and give us kind of that fun look of the old-fashioned, poles of the carousel.
And I would say, actually, interestingly, so for this one, there's less pieces than were in the other winner last year. So in this piece, we're probably about 3,500 pieces. You don't see it in these photos very well, but the floor, there's over 1,000 individual ginger clay floorboards that were made in 10 different shades in order to give us some real variety and kind of a natural look to all of this. And so we were very pleased to be successful with this. I think that takes us through all the slides. We do have a video of the carousel, which will show you what it looks like when it's turning. The carousel itself does not turn on its own. However, for judging, we placed it on a Lazy Susan so the judges could rotate it. And we also knew if we were going to be fortunate enough to win that the trophy case or the winner's case at the Omni spins. So we knew that this would actually spin. And because we were fortunate enough to win, for this next year, the house will be on display at the Omni Grove Park Inn in Asheville, North Carolina. Currently, all of the entries are on display until I believe early January.
I think the 9th.
And then ours remains in the winner's case until next year. And we were very fortunate. We're only the 2nd competitor in history to win back-to-back. So we got to take our 2020 winning piece out. So Santa's Shop came out and the carousel went in.
And there is no audio, so you can go ahead and play the video, no problem.
Just kind of talk over it. There might be a little bit of background noise from when you filmed it, but just to give you a sense of kind of how the carousel looks, I realize it's not the closest view, but it kind of gives you an idea of the scope and scale. What do we do aside from competing? That's a great question. So only one of us actually works in sugar art full-time. That's Sachiko. So our sculptor, she makes beautiful sugar figures and also teaches. I work in information technology. I'm a project manager for a national bank.
And I do succession planning for one of the largest consulting companies in the world.
Tim manages a restaurant and bar in Scottsdale, and Yvonne is co-owner of one of Southern California's largest bike retailers that has both an online presence and brick and mortar. So for us, this is really a fun thing to do. And we do this because we really enjoy working together and creating something beautiful. Winning is wonderful, and we're really happy that we've been fortunate to win twice, but that's not really our focus. Although we are going back next year, it's going to be the 30th anniversary of the competition, and we've set a challenge for ourselves to try to win for 3 times in a row, which no one's ever done. So if we manage to achieve that, great, but if we don't, we'll have a great time. Oh, and I should mention the amount of work involved, because we actually have kind of hinted at that, but we haven't actually said. So the 5 of us over the course of this year, and we started in May and probably should have started earlier, we put in about 2,000 hours across the 5 of us. This is tons of work on nights and evenings, and it's a lot of trial and error and working on things and having to come back to them. So this is kind of that, we have the luxury of time because of the way we do this.
And Chef had a wonderful photo of pieces on a speed rack, and we too have 2 or 3 speed racks full of extra parts. One of the key things for competition and beautiful display pieces like the Port of San Francisco, a shout out, I went to the University of San Francisco and lived there for 14 years, and I miss my city terribly. But, you don't make just one of anything. You have to make extra parts, and we take everything home and track it back and forth. And we were glad to have a lot of it when we went to Asheville, because as we were putting the piece together, we're like, oh, well, we need a doodad here. And so we would use all the doodads that we brought. And it was great that we had those. So it's just one more little fun tidbit that you see that is behind the scenes for a piece as striking as the Port of San Francisco.
Thank you, Adam and Ted. That was amazing. And if Angela is still here, we can have her pop on for any questions that people have. But there were a number of questions that you are such efficient speakers, the 2 of you, because you covered all the questions while you were speaking, which is wonderful because we're coming up on 7. So are there any final questions? Chris, did I miss any in the chat box?
No, but I had a question for Adam and Ted. This is so unusual, and there's so much precision and artistry in your work. How did you get started? I mean, what did you just like eat a candy bar and say, I got to get into this full time? Like, how did both of you get started into this kind of like sugar art?
So you can start quickly with yours.
So I actually, as a family tradition, have made candy for most of my adult life. And so it was always something that I did kind of as a fun hobby. And then as I, became engaged to Ted, we kind of actually worked on some stuff together, and he can talk about his background, but really having an outlet that is creative where you can actually put something into your hands and work a material to get to a finished product is really nice, especially given the fact that our normal professions, we're on the phone a lot, but we don't have any tangible asset or something that we're building at the end. It's a lot of, thinking and a lot of design, but not a lot of actual building. So from that perspective, it was really great. Ted's going to talk about, we also own a custom cake bakery, just Ted and myself here in Phoenix. And we've done specialty cakes for weddings and mitzvahs and special events for 12 years now. And so this was kind of a natural extension of doing something that was a build that wasn't a cake, because as you'd expect, building a cake, there's a lot more limitations on structure and what you can put on there, whereas the gingerbread gives you an ability to actually build something structural.
Yep, and I would add, so I started actually with cake decorating all the way back in high school at Baskin Robbins, where I had a part-time job, because if the ice cream cakes, you didn't have to deal with the public. So there were lots of really hideous clown along the way, and I learned a bit about cake decorating there. Came back to it later in life after graduate school. As Adam mentioned, we have a side business, Sugar Cake Studio, where we make wedding and special occasion cakes, but those really went away with COVID. So then it was like, we thought, well, let's compete. And I used to compete in the Oklahoma State Sugar Art Show. A dear friend and mentor, Carrie Vincent, used to run that show. Sadly, she's passed away. And once that show was gone, I was trying to find a national level competition, and the gingerbread one was kind of the only one that remains. The challenge for that is the distance. We always thought we couldn't compete there because it's so far across the country, but we managed to figure out how to get there and how to fly and make a house work. And then we added our friends into the mix, and here we are now.
It's a wonderful story. Angela, what did you think of that?
I was just saying, Amazing. Beautiful. Like fantastic. Like the detail. Yeah. I mean, I just have so many questions. Like, what did you do for this? Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Beautiful. One of the things that you were saying about I think one of the reasons I kind of gravitated towards cakes and sugar art is the lack of permanency, because it gets eaten. Most of, those cakes get eaten. So it's like, yeah, you pour all your creativity and energy into it, but like, unlike a painting that you have to look at for the rest of your life, or, that exists beyond, there's something that I found comforting in the fact that it would be destroyed and eaten. And that was always like a kind of a thing at Water Bar, where I would give it to the cooks and let them do what they will with the gingerbread. And it was kind of crazy.
So what did they mostly decide to do with them? I'm curious.
Well, there's a lot of seafood at Water Bar, and when we had the stadium, they put a couple. This is probably horrible, and if there's any PETA members on here, there were 2 crabs that they put into the stadium. They just sat there; they didn't do anything. But other times there was, hammers and
I'm thinking of that scene from The Office Space, where they take a printer outside.
Exactly. Yeah, after the busy holiday rush, it was just like, letting out. But I wouldn't, I'm sure moving your gingerbread structures, I mean, I would have other people help me move it. And a lot of people, same with cakes, right? They don't want to have anything to do with it because they don't want to be responsible for its accidental demise or whatnot.
Yeah. I will here at the Omni, because they have staff to help move it. They were most relieved he volunteered to help move it into the display case, and they were more than happy to just put their hands up and walk away and go, okay, you got it, it's yours.
Totally. Yeah.
But it's very true.
Well, this has been so much fun to have you all with us, and we are going to wrap it up because we've gotten to 7 o'clock. But I really appreciate you sharing your expertise, and the artistry is just amazing. And thank you, John, for bringing everybody together tonight, and I hope you have a happy birthday. I wanted to remind everybody to please, you can visit Adam and Ted. I did post the link to your Facebook page, and then Angela, if you want to post anything in the chat where people can get in touch with you if they have any other questions. I want to encourage everyone to consider going to our auction page and donating or joining CPF for 2022, because you wouldn't believe the fun stuff we have coming up. So John, do you want to wrap this up for the year? We'll see everybody next year. It's going to be next year before we come back online.
Oh, yeah, the last program of the year and my favorite program of the year. So thank you all. This was a lot of fun. Okay, so we're going to close it out, but I'm going to leave the room open.